Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we are back for another edition of the Friday FARcast. And this is one of the days where I get to talk with other people, which I really enjoy. It's probably one of my greatest joys when I get to interview people, especially really interesting people, people with stories to tell. And today you're going to hear a great story. And it's a story that will not only warm your heart, but it will also be extremely powerful medicine in believing and living. Believe, when you when you take the word believe, what does it really mean? I mean, to be living, right? That's what the word believe means, is to be living, be living. So this is the medicine of believing, or being able to live. And that's the story of Bree Eaves and her major ordeal with not just one, but multiple aneurysm surgeries. We're going to get into all of that, plus some prehistory around this, which is pretty interesting given the political and historical context of the times that we're living in, because Bree's got some pretty interesting connections with that as well. But before we bring her on, let's do a little True Hemp Science shout out here from my guy Chris. And of course, True Hemp Science is the sponsor of the show. It is by far some of the best CBD products that you can get your little paws around on the internet and off. I'm going to be going to the True Hemp Science shop this weekend in Austin and picking up a few things for myself. So all you got to do is spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you will get the goodie bag, which is like the Whitman sampler, the order within the order, and you will love it, I guarantee you. And for $150 or more, you get free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's truehempscience.com. All right, let us waste no more time and bring in Miss Bree. Bree, how are you?
Dear Robert, hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. And I'm even better because you're here today with us on the show. So
Thank
first of
you.
all,
It's my pleasure.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for like showing up at such short notice too, because
No problem.
sometimes I'm like, okay, who do I want to have on the show? And there's some weeks where I've got people booked out 2-3 weeks in advance. And there are some Fridays where it's like, oh, I've got a gap here. And and I do allow for spontaneity, and maybe there's somebody that shows up or can pop in that might be a really interesting choice, because I like spontaneity. And I woke up today and I was like, I got to reach out to Bree, because you and I had
Oh,
actually
well, thank you.
we had talked about this, right? And I said, I think, when was the last time we spoke? Maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Is that right?
Yeah, shortly after my last surgery, which was in the middle of March.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe about a month ago. And I said, hey, when you're ready, I
Yeah.
really want to get you on the show, because I think this is an incredible story. And today I
It
was just like,
is.
let's see if she's available, and let's see if we can make this happen. So again, thanks for being here,
Absolutely.
and I look forward
Thank you for
to
having me.
spending some time with you. Okay, so my connection with Bree is, I think, through David, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like
Oh,
you were following David, and I may have popped in. Is that how we sort of crossed paths initially?
I don't remember. I know that it's because of Astro. I mean, I've been followers of you and David for, years and years. So I don't really remember, but
Okay.
probably somewhere along those lines.
And then I think it wasn't last year, but the year before, I was doing serious sports, and we connected,
Yeah.
and you came up with some great graphics and some great
Yeah.
intros, and that was really like your stock and trade. Like you're an
Right.
illustrator, a designer. You can do all kinds of, you know, interesting little pyrotechnics with graphics programs. And for a while there, you were kind of at ground zero in the red pill Q patriot world, cooking up a lot of graphics, a lot of intros, a lot of the things that you were doing for me, for a lot of those content creators. Let's go back in
I
time.
was.
Yeah, let's go back in time and let's revisit that because all these people are just exploding, right? They're getting all these eyeballs, and it's all about deconstructing the latest drop. Or how did you wind up kind of in that world and became sort of the go-to girl for all the graphic stuff?
Yeah, the digital queen.
Yeah, yeah. How did that happen?
You know, this was probably, I think, like 7 or 8 years ago, and I started following. His name is Space Shot Mike, and he's one of my dearest friends. And I just started doing
He's in, he's
graphics
in,
with
he's
him,
he's in he's
and
in chat, by the way. Space Shot 76 is in chat.
of course, of
Yeah.
course. Um, And I really resonated with his messages and all of the things that he does for that community. And we just kind of hit the ground running. And I ended up becoming really good friends with a lot of big channels and individuals. And I'm a patriot at heart, I'm a military daughter. So I've always had those roots.
Hmm.
And I try to, teach other people how to be mods, how to, spread these messages that so many people are trying to get out there because I do think it's important um, to spread light and to spread the truth, especially in these very Neptunian days, sometimes dark days, and so that's kind of how I came about into this digital world. And I'm very thankful for all of the connections I've made and the friendships and the work that I've been able to do over. And so is my little guy, if you can hear him in the background. Um, so yeah, that's how all of this happened.
Okay, so you sort of catch fire. You start to go, for lack of a better term, like viral in the creator world, on the creative side of things. And at a certain point, there are people that were there from the beginning, that whose message is still probably as loud and clear as it was then as it is now. But there were a lot of people that jumped on the bandwagon and started to kind of game the system. Right? It was like all of a sudden, uh, there were people who understood that there was clout, right? There were clicks, there was cachet, and they may have had some skin in the game, but maybe not completely. And so all of a sudden now, the space gets filled up by a bunch of other people, a bunch of other characters, and now all of a sudden you're not just dealing with sort of like first wave, patriotic, vox populi people, but like you're into second and third wave people that are coming in and understanding there's an opportunity here that they may be able to cash in on. Were you ever aware of that as it was happening in the process? And at what point did you become aware of it?
Yeah, I keep my circle, my village is small, and I have always been that way most of my life. And it's no different, on this front. And it's really obvious. I think that there's probably three camps. there's the OGs, the people who truly believe in all of this with all of their heart. They're authentic and they're real. And they just want to, get the truth out there. And, those people are throttled. Their numbers don't go up, they don't get seen. Even with Elon Musk running Twitter X, all of us were taken off of YouTube. But then I started to see Camp 2, and that was the people who, might be in it for the money, or the numbers, and maybe they bought their way, and maybe they have connections. I don't know, not my circus, not my monkeys. And then there's Camp 3, and I'm pretty sure that they're non-existent NPCs. I don't think that they're real. I think that they are bots who are paid probably from Camp B, or even the left. And they are, they're out there, they just explode, like you said, and they're getting all these numbers and views and putting out misinformation. And, regardless of what you think of Q or Trump or the right, be careful who you follow, which is exactly why I keep my village small.
Yeah. So the Camp 3 is the one to me that's interesting. Well, it's all interesting, but Camp 3 is interesting because for me, that's where disinformation starts to trickle in. That's where the gatekeeping. You may get some gatekeeping in Camp 2 a little bit, maybe 10-20% of Camp 2 is gatekeeping, right? The other 80% are well-intentioned, well-meaning people who are able to jump on the algorithm and sort of run with it. But it's Camp 3 that is really interesting to me, because that's where I think the big disinformation and the big gatekeeping is taking place. And I don't know if you're referring to like, techno bots or like, people as bots, but Camp 3 for me is really, and I think Camp 3 is still alive and well, by the way. It's just taken on a bit of a
Oh,
different
for sure.
form. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's rampant. I don't even think that they're real people. I mean, maybe they are, but I think, you can go online and you can get an AI girlfriend. Well, you can go and you can create AI, political figures and channels and bots. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I see them all the time. And it's crazy because they get so many views, and they're taking away from, the people who are forging their way forward and have been on this path for a long time, like my friends that I've told you about. So
yeah, that's the one thing that for me initially was my repulsion about Q. And I have an open mind, and I'm willing to look at things, and and if it adds up in my in my splenic 2-4 projector consciousness, I'll check that box and go, yeah, this feels real. I resonate with this, right? But there
yeah,
was something about
you have to be open. Yeah.
I was open, but there was something about Q. Maybe I don't know. Maybe about a month. Maybe about a month in, and here's where things started to turn for me with Q, with the whole Q thing. Is I started to see these YouTube channels pop up, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. It would be, and this is no like disrespect to my fellow people here south of the Mason-Dixon line, but I would see like these two hayseeds talking about these Q drops and really not doing a very good job of interpreting them or connecting any dots, but just vaguely talking about how it related to something else that had been dropped prior, and they're getting 70,000 views on their channel. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You got 70,000 people watching these two people who are probably well-meaning but don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And because they feel like they've gotten this inside source now, they're doing their best to kind of work it out and flex it. And then I just saw more and more of that proliferate. And I know that there are people out there who are like great decoders or whatever, but that wasn't my experience. And all of a sudden, it's like Q has become the McDonald's for truth. And there are a lot of really great burger places where you get a much better burger, a higher quality burger, but you're going to be outnumbered and outflanked by the brand. And that's when I started to pivot on Q in terms of its influence, because it started to blot out any other perspective that was related to the Trump administration or what was happening in front of the scenes or behind the scenes. And for me, that's where it became kind of a no. And I'm willing to recognize that it got baseball moms up to speed about, child trafficking and shit like that. But on the other hand, it was a massive, I think, operation to gatekeep. And the repercussions, and you and I have talked about this, and I love your take on this. The repercussions of breaking with that and having a different or alternative point of view that questioned that was almost sacrilegious. Like you don't question the truth, trust the plan. So what are your thoughts on Q as this kind of, franchise, McDonald's franchise for truth, and then the repercussions of actually questioning that?
Well, so from the beginning, Q really drawed me in because I was seeing, these drops and these things happening that you can't deny. And, there is a really popular Q saying, how many times before it's mathematically impossible, right? And it's so far above me that I don't know if it's AI. I don't know if it's tech. I don't know if it's a group of 10 people. I don't know if it's Trump. All I know is that there are legitimate truths that have happened and that there are definitely people and groups who have cashed on this, have came out and have um, almost been like cult leaders, right? And if you leave, um, you're burned at the stake, or God forbid you question, and people forget like the whole message about Q is to think for yourself. And I cannot tell you what it is. I know that there are so many um, tidbits and just proofs that happen that I'm like, okay, this is above me and my knowing. I can just recognize what is right and what is wrong, and that is something you have to have a really strong conviction in yourself to be able to tell, okay, who is wrong and who is right in this, who has good intentions and who has ill intentions. And um that's kind of when things were really bad during the Biden administration. It can have you, kind of down and out and thinking, okay, what's really going on? But if you have the ability to look at this from a 360-degree view and understand that it's more than politics, it's more than left and right, it's more than, red versus blue, blue pill, black pill, red pill. It will give you clarity and some perspective, and to understand that what is happening right now on this plane is far above any of our comprehension. And just to stay away from those people who do want to sell you a nasty, soy burger. I prefer Wagyu beef from a pub.
Always,
So, and I
always.
have that.
Yeah.
I have that in my community. I have my people, and I'm steadfast with that.
Um, so I want to put a pin on what you just said, which is it is far above the political, um, the sort of binary relationship between red and blue and conservative and progressive. Let's put a pin on that because I think that conversation needs to happen again when we start to talk about your life and what your experience has been post surgery. So let's just put a pin there for
Yeah.
that. As
Well,
far as
the word would be spiritual. This is
well,
spiritual.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here because I think there is a real evolutionary process at work in your life, right? Because you get thrown into like ground zero of this movement, which is it's like a wildfire, right? And you're connected to all these people and you're creating all this content and you're like on the front lines for all of this. And it is very political, even though there are some kind of spiritual quasi-religious overtones in Q, which I think were intentional because they couldn't just have something that was didactic. They needed to weave in some sort of higher purpose or element of faith to really hook people in because it would give them not just a decoded view of what was theoretically going on or going to happen, but a higher understanding that they're a part of something bigger, something more, right? So there's that
Yeah.
element to it, but which I think has created its own sort of offshoot. And now we have this kind of MAGA thing going on, which I'm not always like thrilled with because you step outside the lines and you question some of these hires or you question the buddy buddy relationship with Israel or even real
Right.
ID, and all of a sudden they want to burn you at the fucking stake, right? Like, since when did
Yeah.
this happen? Weren't we individuals, who were taught to think
Right.
independently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said
And
right.
that's part of it too. Yeah, I mean that's part of it too. You don't have to agree with, everything. And you need to make sure that you're sovereign in yourself and in your beliefs and if you have an intuition to tap into that. Um I mean, I'm not a huge Israel fan, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't agree with all of that. I certainly don't agree with Ukraine and Russia, and sometimes I think that Putin is a pretty good leader. Like, am I chastised for it? Yeah, at times, but I'm not afraid to speak what I feel or what I see, and I'm also, not afraid to admit that hey, as far as comprehension and understanding goes.
When again, and are familiar with a lot of the people that we're indirectly referring to, and I feel like you can really kind of gauge somebody's credibility or their believability if they're willing to say, I might have been wrong on this. I might have, misinterpreted a lot of this at a certain point in my life. And I'm feeling like it served a purpose. And now we have to move on and do something different. I think those people would gain huge amounts of respect and credibility if they came, off of that kind of Q sugar high. Did you see anybody ever do that and not just throw it all away and say it's all bullshit, it's all fake, but admit to the fact that there was some hinky maybe going on and that they wanted to kind of refocus and reframe what they were doing?
Um, Absolutely. I told you, I mentioned in the beginning of the show, Space Shot and Mike, who's again like one of my best friends, he has an uncanny ability to be very humble and always admits if he's got something wrong or if he does not know. Along with his co-hosts, they've had a show for years that I have, done graphics for, and I respect all of them, and that community. And uh, they've just held really steadfast to that, and they don't ask for money, they don't profit off of that movement. They really get in there and decode, and they're good at it. And they're good what they do, and they're authentic, and they've been doing this now for 7 8 years, and that kind of authenticity you know, forges a path forward when you have people who are, like I said, from camp 2 or camp 3, and it sets them apart. And I've always tried to, support that to the best of my abilities, whether I always agreed on things or not. And I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the litmus. If somebody can admit they were wrong, and you know, not just throw in the towel, but keep going and kind of reset what they're doing. That to me is the mark of character and believability. That not everybody's going to be right. We're not always going to be right, and when we're on the record, uh, and we're not right, it kind of behooves us in some ways to address it. I mean, this is what we would ask for in the mainstream press, wouldn't we? If you were wrong about something, would you want to correct that? So if we want that out of the mainstream press, well, why would we want that out of the so-called alternative people as well?
Correct, right? I'm not going to name names, but one of them is a Taurus moon. So that person is not straying far from their beliefs anytime soon, which is good. We need rock studies.
What did you say? What was the word? This person is what?
A Taurus moon.
A
So
Taurus
we
moon.
need rock
Oh,
studies like that.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. We're getting
So,
astro specific here now. Okay, I like that. Um, yeah, yeah. So uh, as we kind of round up this conversation about Q and you kind of being in the epicenter of all of that, how much of that community original wave uh, do you think is still intact? Like I know there are people like David Nino Rodriguez who has Juano Savanon, who's kind of sort of connected to that world network. So there are still some of these people around, Ann Vandersteel, et cetera. But how much of that original sort of like, Q core is still happening, do you think?
um, like the original people who have,
Well,
been
not the
doing this
original
since day
people, but let's
one.
say
Is that what?
let's say when it was at peak level, like peak Q.
Uh-huh. How many of those folks are still around? Is that what you're wondering?
Yeah, like if PQ, is maybe what 2018, maybe, right? It's PQ. That's
Oh,
100, like 100%. Where are we now with sort of the Q vibe? Is it somewhere in the 30s? Has it morphed into mega? Because I still hear stuff about drops.
um, yeah. I think that the people who, really believe in this and have been there since day one, they're still going at it. And I think that, like my friends that I've told you about are they make up for probably uh I want to say 10% just, but I'm biased because I keep my village small, but a lot of it has spilled into the MAGA movement, which is fine. However you get your truth out, get the truth out. But then again, you have those really bad camps who have just exploded in their numbers and their views and their base. And they tend to overshadow, but you know what? Those people are not, I don't know. That's all I'm gonna say. The good are there and the bad are there for
Mhm.
sure still.
Right. Good. Okay.
And I
Wheezy
hold
Girl
on to
says
the
that the Q
good.
drops are coming to life. There's no denying that. Maybe I should have a Q person on
They
one of these
do.
days. Maybe
I have the
maybe I should get
person.
your guy Space Shot on one of these days,
You
and
should. You would
and
be
we
totally down for that.
we could talk Q, and I can get a Q perspective that might be
A
perhaps
hundred percent.
a bit less tainted, right? So,
Yeah, no, 100%. I
mhm,
have looked to him for the truth for 8 years, and he's
mhm,
fair and he's balanced, and he's one of the most intelligent people that I know. And he would
mhm.
be wonderful, and I'm sure he'd be down for it.
Cool. I think it would be a good discussion because I have questions, and I think
He
you know.
has answers, I
Well,
guarantee you.
that would be a great discussion. That'd be an awesome discussion. So we'll bookmark
Yeah,
that and see if we can get them
I'll
on.
link you guys up.
Awesome. All right, let's move on from Q here because you moved on for the most part in the creative content and community world. Um, and then at what point? Because you and I were connecting a couple of years ago. It wasn't this last football season, but it was the football season before that. Doing serious sports, you're sending me graphics. You and I are texting back and forth, talking about ideas. Uh, at what point did you become aware of the aneurysm issue?
Well, you're gonna love this because it's very astrologically aligned. It was last April, which was eclipse season, when I started getting dizzy. And it was really weird because
I
I
remember
was
that you
laying
were
in bed
talking
with
about
like the
like vertigo.
worst.
You were talking about vertigo a lot. I remember this.
Yes. Yes. It was insane. I went from, I was going at it as a homemaker, sourdough every day, my homeschooling my children, um, just totally, you know, living my life. And I started getting vertigo attacks, and it felt like the worst drunk spins in the world. And they would only last for like 10 seconds, but they would happen random. And they began to increase in frequency. And I went to go see ENT, um, to see, if there's something in my ears and, if there's something wrong with my equilibrium. And he ordered a CAT scan and an MRI. And I did that at the end of August. Um, and called me back and was like, Bree, we're here to tell you that we found something on the MRI. You don't have anything wrong with your ears. However, we did find an aneurysm. And I mean, my heart stopped. My, um, oh gosh, it's spinning. Can you still hear me? All right, good.
Mhm.
Um, my father, who's a lieutenant colonel, he was given like a 1% chance at living. When he was deployed, his aneurysm, he had one and it ruptured and almost died. And so when I heard that, I got very afraid. I have little ones and, family and friends that I need to be here for. And I got really afraid, obviously. I decided to research the best doctors here in the state of Michigan for that. And I was able to become a patient at the University of Michigan, and they happen to have only like one of three um, neuro neuro centers in the country. And my surgeon is only one of a few who is, he has his degree in both endoscopic and invasive treatments for aneurysms. So I became a patient. They learned that it was much bigger than originally thought. It was almost 12 millimeters, which is huge. Um, and the area that it was located in my brain, instead of having a minimally invasive procedure where they go through their groin and kind of singe it off or put like a coil around it, that was out of the picture, and told me that I would have to have it clipped. And do you want me to keep like going into all of that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And clipped means they go into your skull and all 5 layers, and they remove a portion of your skull and expose your brain, and they put literally a clip over the base of the aneurysm to cut off the blood supply. It's well known, and it's been well practiced for many years and has a really high success rate. So, because of the size and the family history, my grandfather also died from an aneurysm.
So this
They were
is
like, when you,
generational. You have a medical history
yeah,
of aneurysms in your
yeah,
family.
yes,
Wow.
familiar, yes. And my sister has one too. um, and they just monitor hers, but and my great grandpa, it's pretty crazy. Um, But they were like, because of the size of this, we would like to, operate on you as soon as possible. So, I mean, within like learning about it and finding it and getting into U of M, it was like 6 weeks. I was terrified, obviously. I've never had a surgery. And they also told me, they're like, there's no guarantees that this will stop your, vertigo. But obviously, like, it meant that it would save my life. So onward we went, and I went for the surgery, and um it was not as bad as you would think. It truly wasn't. I was really slow the first like couple of days, but I
Mhm.
came out of it, and I forgot to send you pictures, but we'll spare the community that,
We'll,
because
we'll,
they were
we'll
they were
spare
pretty
we'll,
gnarly.
we'll spare the David Cronenberg
Yeah,
portion
yeah.
of
They
today's
they were
broadcast.
gnarly. They were gnarly. I had people telling me I looked like a Viking queen warrior, and just, yeah. But I had 40 staples along the side of my head, going from my ear to the middle of my head, and some well, no, not staples, sutures. And I was okay. I was all right. And the day after I got my staples removed, which was the 2 week mark, um, I started getting a headache, and my face started to swell, and my headache would not go away. So I went to the ER, and they gave me a CAT scan and found that I had what we learned, a really deadly brain infection. And
So now
it
you
was
go from you
so
go from
bad.
you go from aneurysm to brain infection.
Yes.
And, well,
And
actually, aneurysm
thankfully,
operation to brain infection. Okay, so now this is
yeah,
all
yeah,
like next level. Okay,
yeah,
we got a crisis here.
wild, wild, absolutely wild. Yeah. Um, Thankfully, I had all the IVs going with meds, and I wasn't aware of how serious it was, which is a blessing in disguise, to be honest. Um, but they had to life flight me, for the second time down to U of M.
So
And
you're on a helicopter to University of Michigan.
yeah, yes.
Did you feel
Yeah, which is
special?
4 hours away.
Did you feel special?
I was the Ativan and, whatever else they had pushing in my IV was so good that I I didn't even have time to care.
You
So,
you were literally in the
um,
clouds. You were in the clouds on the way to
I was
UM.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I even took little video snippets
Oh my
of
God.
this,
That
in
is so.
hopes that like one day
Breed. That is so millennial. I hate to tell you that, but that is so
I
millennial.
am totally a millennial,
I
but I'm
know.
also creative. And I
Yeah.
wanted to document this in hopes that, one day I can share this story because it's actually quite rare for younger
Well,
people
this
to
is why
see.
you're on the show, honestly, right? Like,
Exactly.
because before you get to the next part of the story, I wanted to bring something up here. I wanted to show people sort of how rare aneurysms are because I did a quick search and shout out to Google AI. um, Approximately 3.2% of the population worldwide has unruptured brain aneurysms. The rupture rate is about 10 per 100,000 people annually. Women are more likely to have a brain aneurysm than men with a 2.1 ratio after the age of 50, and they also have a higher risk of rupture. And this was interesting. The risk factor, age, female sex, and a history of smoking are significant risk factors for
Which I was
aneurysm
guilty of.
recurrence. Isn't that interesting? Right?
Even though it's familiar, even though it runs in my family, I was guilty of smoking, which I have quit. I have stopped smoking for 7 months, 6 months now. But the statistics are horrifying,
Yeah.
absolutely horrifying. If they rupture, you like 50% of the people don't make it to the hospital, and the other 50 usually have severe deficits. So it was scary. It's very scary.
Yeah. So here you are. You're headed back to U of M to now deal with a brain
Yeah.
infection. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And they were really good with their bedside manner. They did not let me know the severity of it. Thank God again. But I had about 24 hours for like some cultures to kind of grow in the lab to pinpoint what this was. Again, it was a very rare bacteria that caused this. They did like an inquisition into the hospital to figure out how I even got it.
Yeah. Like, how does it
um,
get there? Right. It's gotta be
yeah, it
external.
wasn't it wasn't a staph, which is pretty common for, post-surgical infections. It wasn't staph. It wasn't the typical bacteria. But nonetheless, about 23 hours later, my surgeon came in and told me that they need to go and do a washout, a craniectomy. And what that entailed was, unlike my first surgery where they sawed off a small piece of my skull and put it back together. This time they took out that bone, washed my brain.
You got
It was
brainwashed.
crazy when I
You got literally
did, in the
brainwashed.
best
It's,
in the
instead of
best
all
way.
instead of all these, I'm sorry, fallen Q people who got figuratively brainwashed. No, I'm just jabbing a little bit there, but you got literally
You're fine.
brainwashed. Yeah,
In the
yeah.
best way. Um, and so they did that, and they were like, the one thing that you need to be aware of is that we may not be able to put your bone back if the infection has spread and gotten into the bone.
Oh, great. So I'm just going to live the rest of my
Well,
life with a hole in my head. Gee, yeah.
I went for surgery, right? And I was very, very sick. At this point, I was very sick.
Mhm.
Um, high fevers. I was on every kind of IV antibiotic possible. Um, and I'm sorry for my dog and my baby in the background,
That's okay.
but
It's good. Good
they're
chaos.
happy.
Yeah.
They're happy little fellas. But so I went into the surgery. And, mind you, these surgeries don't have, they don't have the best, outcomes. Okay.
Right. The
And
success rate for very intricate, delicate brain surgeries
Yeah,
is
right. Yeah, yeah. It's
the
not.
success rate is very low. Very, a lot can go wrong, and you could have operator error. The surgeon
Yeah,
can
and
make a wrong,
deficits.
right,
Yeah,
right. There's a lot that could happen.
yeah.
So not only are you dealing with the
But I did it.
clip, but then you have this other surgery that happens. Yeah.
Right. So I went, oh, and the first surgery, mind you, was 10 hours long. 10-hour long open brain surgery. This one was, I believe, only 4. And unfortunately, they found that the infection did penetrate the bone. And so they had to dispose of my bone. Um, and what that meant was I would have to go months without the bone flap on the side of my head. And I would have
But
to
by
wear
the
a
way,
helmet.
if
Um,
you've ever seen pictures of Bree, fantastic hair and beautiful,
thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you.
And
Um,
and
thank
now
you. Yeah.
she's got to wear a helmet.
Yeah, and my part of my hair was shaved, which it grows back, but I mean it's still traumatic, right?
Sure,
Um, so I came out of that. This time I think I was in the hospital for about a week. Um, this time was rough. It was really rough. I had a walker, okay? I had a walker for a couple of weeks. I
that's
had to wear a
humbling.
helmet. I had to Yeah, I had to be really slow and intentional about my movements. It was really hard for me to look to the left with my vision, um, not because I couldn't see, but it just hurt. Surprisingly, all of my surgeries, I didn't have like head pain, but it was the other things
Interesting.
that happened. I needed help bathing. I needed help getting around. I could not lift my babies. I couldn't, vacuum. I couldn't do anything that was me. And
You're at ground zero.
it's been really hard.
You're at ground zero in your
Yes,
life, right? This is ground zero. You're dependent
absolutely.
on everybody around you,
Absolutely.
and you're used to
Yeah.
being kind of superwoman because you're
Yeah.
homeschooling, you're baking, you got these kids. Hey, you're even
Yeah.
doing some art and some creation on the side. I mean, you're literally superwoman. And now you have
Yeah.
to kind of start from the beginning.
Right. And that was humbling and it was right before the holidays. Um, and it was hard. Just I don't even know. I guess I started to feel better around the end of January, somewhat. I was really tired, but I'm a warrior through and through,
No
and
doubt.
I take it. I am my father's daughter, 100%. My dad spent I don't know how long in the overseas hospital, and then at Walter Reed for his aneurysms, but then came the eclipse in March. And so 6 months later, I got the date for my third and final surgery, which was called a cranioplasty, a day after my birthday, which is just so crazy to me. Um, and so we went down there and got my cranioplasty, and that's where they take a custom fitted implant. It's made out of like a plastic kind of, but it's very highly biocompatible. And put it like they use AI and all of that, so the measurements are like perfect.
Precise.
And yes, yes. And so went down there, on my birthday. And anticipation for my next surgery the day after, and I decided that I was going to go in differently this time. I was not going to have any fear. I wasn't going to be afraid. I went in with the intention that my body has already accepted this implant because there is a risk of your body rejecting it or an infection again.
Mhm.
And I just decided that I needed to find purpose in all of this because for a while I did not understand why this happened. I was not a victim, but for me, I need to always constantly be finding meaning in my life. And I decided that the reason this happened was because I need to not let my head go to waste. I'm too smart. And I was like, you know what? After all of this, I am going to go and give back to the health community who kept me alive, saved my life, and has done all of this for me. And I'm going to go finish my nursing school because that's what I was doing before I became a mom and a stay-at-home mom for, a decade.
Mhm.
And so I went in ready to go. I was excited. I mean, I was nervous, obviously, right? But
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
went in with a totally different mind frame, totally
Right.
different.
Yep.
And it was a quick surgery. I had the best hospital experience anybody could ask for.
Mhm.
And I have had the easiest recovery. I have zero
Oh,
deficits, Robert. None,
this,
none. And in fact, I'm better than I was before. I, I don't know how. I looked at this as like a rebirth for me.
mm.
It rewired my brain. I don't know what it did, but I feel so optimistic. I am so excited for my life and my future and just so thankful and so humble to have gone through all of this and to have had so many people by my side and prayers and my patriot community who prayed for me and you and my spiritual community and um, family, friends, everything that I actually kind of teared up the other night because I was so thankful that I went through this. As crazy as it sounds, I would not have this mindset and this heartbeat that I have right now if I wouldn't have. And I've never taken anybody or life for granted. That's just not who I am. But it's just so different for me now. That I feel radiant and glowing and just new. Um, and I can't let that go to waste.
Okay. Boy, there's a lot to unpack there. One of the things,
There usually always is with me.
well, one of the things that popped into my brain when you were talking about the three procedures remind me, and I know Saturn was probably playing a role in here somewhere in this
Uh-huh.
in this experience with you. Saturn in Pisces. Okay, so
Yep.
when Saturn moves across a planet, whether it's the sun, whether it's the ascendant, whether it's Mercury, whether it's a return with Saturn, there are three functions to the Saturn movement. The first movement is the conjunction, which is addressing the crisis and the problem. Okay.
Hmm.
That would have been the aneurysm surgery, right? And then what happens
Yeah.
with Saturn is it will move forward, it will stop, it will then move backwards, and in that backward motion, when it crosses back over the other planetary object, there's another crisis. It's like
Right.
whoops, we didn't get it all right, and it's like
Yeah.
we got to go back and do it again. But it was that third pass of Saturn, which is the most critical because at that time you had enough time to kind of reassess everything and reframe literally your mindset so that when
Yeah.
Saturn moved forward and hit that critical point, you're like, this is an opportunity, right? This is the test. And it so mirrors the Saturn, I call it the sandpapering of Saturn when it goes back and
Right.
forth. And so that third pass of Saturn was literally the test. That was the
Yeah.
test. And your ability to be
Yeah.
fearless, your ability to address it in a conscious way was your ability to pass that test.
I know, and it makes me tear up. It really does because I haven't been given an easy life, right? Nothing's been handed to me, and I'm strong, and it just watching it all unfold, and especially with the eclipses, and I have Chiron in the sixth, and Saturn being the teacher and the father, and this, my dad has. Uh, been here for me every step of the way through this, and we have been able to connect on that level. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that I'm so thankful for.
Saturn the father, right? It's another part of the Saturn story. It's a positive Saturn story.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You know, the other thing too. Let's just touch on this for a little bit. And by the way, I think there's good reason to have a large dose of animus towards hospitals, doctors, the medical profession in general post 2020, right? Like they didn't do themselves any favors in,
Absolutely.
building bridges to trust.
Yeah.
But in
I
your
remember your
case,
mother.
oh, my mother it was a nightmare.
I know, which
I
broke
don't,
my
I,
heart because I remember
uh,
she was a Pisces too, and I had
oh,
wished that I could have been there to help you take care of her.
yeah, well, I had a little local Pisces. Dr. Jones did a pretty
Yeah.
good job as your
Yeah.
stand-in. But
Yeah.
but you actually have a positive story to tell, right?
I do. Yeah.
In spite of, however, that mysterious bacterial infection crawled into your brain, you have a positive story to tell about your experience in the medical world. And
Mhm.
and I think that that's really important. I mean, and there's a lot of bad actors out there, and they're still out
Yeah.
there. But even with my mother, like there were a couple doctors she ran across. They're actually pretty good. Like not
Right.
all of them, but there were some that were pretty good, and kind of helped her stick
Yeah.
around a little bit longer. Um,
Yeah.
so not everybody's a bad person in the medical world, right?
No.
The
It,
institution itself may be compromised, deeply compromised, but there are still people who care. And in your world where you're dealing with brain surgery, microsurgery, like these people are not going to fuck around, right?
no.
They're
No.
not going to fuck around unless, of course, they put one of Elon's, microlink
Chips.
chips, yeah, in your
Right.
in your new brain, right? But no, they're not going to fuck around. They don't. They can't. They can't. There's malpractice. There's
Yep.
reputation.
Yep.
So I'm glad you have a positive story to tell about an institution that has been,
Yeah.
as I said, deeply compromised.
Yeah. And, I have become so close with the nurses and my team, both locally and at U of M, because they saved my life. And I'm, I was a frequent flyer to the hospitals for so long, that I'm really thankful to have those connections and to have made those friendships. And I want to be a nurse who is set apart from the stigma and the corruption. And I want people to know that there are people, like me who do care and who, I'm very holistic. If, most people who know me know that I'm very holistic.
You are not an
And
institutional person.
no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm heavy 12th house, but um I want people to know that there are, good caregivers out there and that modern medicine can save lives and can change lives, but you also have to do the work because I could have easily fallen into despair.
Oh yeah.
The first two surgeries that they gave me, I had to be put on meds to make sure that I didn't have a seizure, and those are they use them also for mood stabilizers,
Hmm.
and I hated them because they made me feel really dark. And I had to push through that every day so that it wouldn't,
Yeah.
trickle into my life and wouldn't take over and I wouldn't become depressed because a lot of people, things like this, they do get depressed and your mindset and your heart they can truly, what's the word? Impact your healing, both physically and spiritually and
Absolutely.
mentally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So
And I had to make a conscious choice to not do that. And, this third time I was like, I'm going in optimistic and excited. And here I am.
it's the third pass to Saturn. It always
Yeah.
works out like that. The first time you think you nailed it, you think you found the problem, you think you nailed it, and then there's the retrograde, and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, I got more to deal with
Yeah.
here. Right. And then it comes
Yeah.
back around that third time, and it's up to you to have the resolve, and the discipline, the focus, and the maturity to stare it right in the face and say, okay, uh, this is how I'm going to handle my fate or my destiny. This is my mindset. This
Yeah.
is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right. Terry has been
It's a heavy, it's a heavy, intense thing to face your mortality. Not one
awesome.
time,
Well,
not two times, but three times.
and hey, let's not forget you've got four children, right? So it's not like
Three.
three. It's
Yeah.
not three. My bad. You
Three.
got three
Yeah.
three children. It's not like you're living alone somewhere and you don't have a lot of connect. You got three children. You got a partner. You got a father who loves you. I mean, it's there's a lot at stake here, right? With facing your own mortality because it's also the lives you'd be leaving behind, not just your own. So
Right.
that's huge. It's huge,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
huge. It's like it amplifies and multiplies everything, right? Um,
Right.
Terry's been trying to get this message across here. Copper strengthens vessel walls. Have you looked into
Oh.
copper as a remedy for protecting your brain from any further aneurysm activity?
I have I have not, but I definitely will. I know that a lot of hospitals actually utilize copper to clean the facility to ward off bacteria and stuff.
Right?
It's more common in the EU, right? But um that's interesting. I do have to have like yearly MRIs, which is fine,
Mm-hmm.
just as a preventative measure, but I will look into copper. Thank
Yeah,
you,
look at the
Terry.
copper. Yeah, and Terry put I don't know if Terry is a he or she, so I apologize. But Terry put up uh, this, which says, "I survived a widowmaker, MI, and blood bone cancer. I'm an RN, CCRN, CEN,
Wow.
MICN. I'll be happy to speak." So I think if Terry brings
Yeah.
copper up, Terry might know a
Yeah.
few things, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. I will look into that. Thank you again.
All right. So every morning when you wake up now, what's your first thought?
I get excited instead of, dread, like, oh, I'm so tired. Like I'm a Pisces, all right, let's be real. I love to snuggle in bed and be cozy. And I still get that in every day, but I get excited. I'm so excited for the future and for every day. I truly, truly am. And it's an honor and it's a privilege. And don't ever, take life or people for granted. And I make sure that, I give myself that grace and I give the people that I care about and I love um that too.
This is why I wanted to have you on the show, because I work with a lot of people on one-to-one
Yeah.
client basis. And thank God, most of my clients, if not all of them, are really bright, courageous um, seekers. Seekers of the
Yeah.
truth, right? So it's really great when I work with somebody, because you they're already pre-qualified in a lot of ways, right? And yet,
Yeah.
even in our community, where people are, strong spirited, have really good discernment skills, maybe too good in some ways, because it shows them where the edges of the game are, right? Even these people from time to time just go, I don't know what's going on, and I don't know where it's
Yeah.
all going. Can you look at my chart, and maybe I'm missing
Right.
something here, right? Like, and this is again this small sample size of the people that come to me as a client. These are really high level people, highly functioning people with really good earth skills and beyond earth skills, right?
Yeah.
So when they're trying to navigate the fog, right? That there are a host of other people out there that are really lost. And
Yeah.
many of them are lost because they don't have any faith and hope in the future, right? There's a lot of existential doubt and fear that's floating around, and people are trying to find some degree of purpose and meaning in their lives. And with
Hmm.
all the social media and with all the noise and all the political bickering, right? And that's not even throwing in like the food and what's in the atmosphere and all the other shit, right? It can be very, very difficult. It can be really, really tough sledding. And yet you have literally seen the light.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to have you on the show so that you can share your story with people and tell people that
No.
there is still something to live for. There is still
There.
something to live
Yeah.
for. They have to find the thing that's worth living. And you've done that.
Yeah. You know, the one quote that I have said throughout this entire process has been, I trust my life. I trust life. And if you were to ask me that, a year ago or, 8 years ago, 10, 15, 20, as a Pisces, right, I would have had a hard time saying that. Because it used to be really easy for me to go, down into the depths or, go way up into the sky. And this has truly grounded me and given me the ability to just trust life.
Those are powerful words. Those are so powerful. How many people can absolutely say, "Hey, I trust life"? Oh, you know
It's
that
so
that that's a,
heavy.
that's a
It's
tall
so
order right
heavy.
now. That's a tall order.
It is. It
Yeah,
is. But it's exciting.
yeah. I love it. So good. So good. Well, listen, I know you're busy, and you've got your youngins, and you got things to do, bread to bake. Um,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I just wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing a really good story. Look, you know, this is one of the things that I think we might talk about this before we hit play, right? We're going live. You know, this is even like maybe in the political world, maybe in the Q world, we're not going to make a difference between the two. But I feel like there's a whole host of people that are looking for wins out there.
Mhm.
Like, we want to see people arrested. That would be a win, right? We want to see
Mhm.
Tony Fauci behind fucking bars. That's a win,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
And by the way, it would be a win. It would be a huge win.
Hell yeah.
And I'm not downplaying that, right? But here's where it's become imbalanced in a lot of ways, because a lot of people are looking externally for those wins, right? They're
Yeah.
looking for
Yeah.
those things to validate this thing inside themselves that
Yeah.
they need to have validated. And it's
It's
never going to work that way. Never.
right.
And another one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because your story's a win, right?
Thank you.
These are the wins that we need to pay attention to, and that we need to remember, right? Like, this is a win.
Yeah.
And if Bree can have this win, then you can have a win too in your life.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
may have to muster the same courage. You may have to face the same fears or different fears. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be a bevy of arrests that change the world. It's going to
Yeah.
be
It's
your ability to go through something like what Bree went through, and on the other side of it, say yes to your life without any
yeah.
reservation, without
Yeah.
any terms and conditions. And that's where
Yeah.
the win is.
Yeah. And we can change, we can change our world, and it's through all of us. And it sounds so corny and, so rainbows and butterflies and kitties, but it's true. And I've always kind of thought that I've carried a message like that, especially in the patriotic community, where I try to encourage us all to, get outside of the digital and to do things that matter in our own lives, because it does spill out, and those are the roots that grow something new. Which is a great message for the spring. We are in that season.
We're in that season, and I think it's really interesting that if you look at and I'm not sure how intentional you were with this, but this is the beauty of the subconscious and the process of creation. Let me bring
Yeah.
up the thumbnail. Let me bring up the thumbnail that you created, because I don't know if you know how symbolic this is.
I
You
do.
know,
That's why I chose
you
it.
I love the symbolism, right? So
You
here we
know that
go.
that's what I work with.
Here we go. We gotta look at Bree's thumbnail here to get a. So what do we have here? We have a profile silhouette, the crown, the shadow, and oh, we have a butterfly. We have a
Mhm.
butterfly. And you know how I see this, Bree? I see
Oh,
this as your surgery, your experience, and this broadcast as having a butterfly effect.
oh wow. I
That's how
like
I see it.
that.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, I like that. I saw it as transformation, and
Oh, it is.
the
It's that
spring,
too.
right, right. I love it.
But this is the butterfly effect. And you never know. See, that's the beautiful thing about it. You never know how what you say or what you do affects somebody somewhere in another part of the world. And you may not even be aware of it. Right. Like,
I hope I do.
well, I
Yeah.
think, like let's say somebody, I don't know, in Romania, here's the story, right? Here's your story.
Mhm.
And then for whatever reason, it gives them a sense of hope and purpose to their day one day, right? And then they have an interaction with another person. And had
Yeah.
they not heard your story, that interaction could have gone very differently. But upon hearing your story and embodying in a positive sense, the interaction goes in a positive way, and it could change the direction of that person's life moving forward, and that there could have been an intersection, but before that, that conversation happens before the intersection, and then for whatever reason, that person in that moment brings the energy that they may have heard in this podcast to that conversation. The other
Yeah,
person hears it and they go right instead of left. Right? That is the butterfly effect.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And part of the reason why I was a little weirdo and tried to document in little video snippets and pictures all of my surgeries, all of my life flights, the hospital stays, the recovery, is because there is not anything like that out there, for younger people. I didn't have anything like that, like this, show today. I had to, do this trial by fire and go in there and, just trust myself, trust my long story short is there's no advocacy or really support group for younger people who experience things like this, and part of it is because it is, the statistics are pretty grim, so maybe there aren't stories like that. um but
No,
I do hope that, what I've said and what you've shared, can help people and can touch them, and um that I can be some light in a world that's
no.
dark sometimes, but the light always wins.
Well, it's certainly won the day for you. That's for sure. I got.
Yes, it
I'm gonna.
is.
I just have to put my email address here in the chat because Terry is a very interesting person and would love to have Terry on as a guest. Terry, I don't know if you've been following some of this conversation in chat. Let me give you. This is what Terry shared. She testified against Fauci in Washington, D.C. And not only
Wow.
that, but she was in his department at UNC Chapel Hill. So
Oh
I want
my.
I want to get Terry on the show and
Yeah.
and have a really interesting conversation about that. That would be awesome. So
Yeah.
speaking of awesome, you're awesome, and so glad you were able to spend some time with us today. Is there anything else you want
Thank
to share
you.
with people? Anything else you want to share with people before we sign off?
Um, I just want to, thank you obviously for always being a light in my life since we have connected. And for you daily, I listen to your shows. I have for years. They always offer me so much clarity and insight. And to your viewers who may have sent prayers my way, I felt them through and through. And also my patriotic community. I love them all, and all of their prayers have carried me and have held me. And I'm so thankful and blessed and excited. Trust life.
Trust life. We'll leave it right there.
Yes.
Bree, we love you. We're glad
Okay.
you're here, and
Love you too.
we'll catch up with you somewhere down the line. Check in, and
Sure. Sure.
we all support you moving forward in your return to nursing. Because
Thank you.
I know that if there's anybody that can make a difference in that world, it's going to be you.
Pardon?
I said I know if there's anybody that can make a difference in that world, it's going to be you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so, so much. I hope that you have a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, Bree. We'll catch up later.
All
Okay.
right.
All right. Bye bye.
All right. Love you.
All right. There we go. What a story, huh? What a great story. And thanks to Bree for just jumping on. I got up this morning and it was like, ding, 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 ding. I wanted to reach out to Bree because we'd already talked about it. She'd already agreed to be on the show. And it was like, this is the perfect time, the perfect day. Because of course, who we have next week. It's winter. It's getting cold. It must be winter. So we have a bit of spring. Oh, look! Speaking of spring, look who's here. Look who's here, Mr. Spring Chicken himself. The great Jasper has joined the show. Look at that. Here we go, right there. There he is, Mr. Spring Chicken. You just had to get on the show, didn't you? The man, that's right. He is the man. The Astro Cat. Shout out to Ursula in Arizona. She just had to say goodbye to her longtime little tuxedo companion, Max. That's always difficult when we have to say goodbye to our little friends, little beloveds. So shout out to Ursula and in her time of saying au revoir. Au revoir, Max. You had a very good life. And you're on to the great cat pack in the sky. Yeah, you'll be there too one of these days. That's right. You'll be there too. All right, everybody, have yourselves a great weekend. I'll be back on Sunday night. And whoa, dude. Not that young. Not that young. You slipped on that, didn't you? You wanted to get back here. Come on. Come on, get back up here. Come on. If you want it, if you fall off the horse, get back on it. There you go. There. All right. Yeah, Sunday night. Going to be a banger. I've been building some stuff for Sunday night. You're gonna want to watch it. Also, David and I are gonna hook up soon. We've been talking. He reached out to me last week. So, Dave, if you enjoy it when David and I, do our thing, that'll happen soon. Hopefully next week. We were supposed to do it this week, but a lot of stuff came up for him. So it's the return of me and the Leo King. And it'll probably be on David's channel in his world. So that should be coming, and hopefully this week. In whisper, I will let a little cat out of the bag here. David and I are actually talking about doing an event together, in time and place TBD. So the last time we had David here in Texas, it was smashing success. Absolutely smashing success. Great energy, great turnout. It was really a meeting of the tribes. So yeah, we're talking about it. We're talking about it. Details forthcoming. All right, that's it. Thank you. Take care of yourselves. Treat each other well. Love you all. God bless. Robert Phoenix signing off. Bye for now.